I'm actor, writer, director, and sometimes DJ Diallo Riddle.
And I'm producer, DJ, and songwriter LUXXURY, a.k.a. the guy who sometimes talks about interpolation on the internet.
Love that you always whisper that. And this week I've been looking forward to this for so long. We have a very special guest. He's a great friend of mine. He's my writing partner. You've seen him do a million TV shows. He's in movies that I cannot mention right now. It's Bashir Salahuddin. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me, guys. This is fun. Excited to talk about music.
We're excited to talk about music. We're excited to talk about Prince.
Yeah.
And all right, before we get into the song Prince, I want to ask right off the bat, what makes Prince special to you?
There are two things about him that I've always found really incredible. One is his work as a collaborator. A lot of it you've told me about. And I've always felt like if I was ever to do a Prince movie, that's the one I'd want to do. Just about him. Because, I mean, just think about, he's so successful and so talented, but, like, there's still more in the tank, right?
There's
still, like, you know what? And I'm going to go produce 6 other albums for 6 other people. And I'm going to go play guitar.
Do this Vanity 6 album over here.
I'm going to drop some vocals on this person's record.
The family has an album that we got to get out.
I'm going to go
fix
this person.
Time is basically just me. With
Time is basically if...
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about the Time, too, because I
Shout
will
out Morris
say,
Day. We love you.
Shout out to Morris Day. He's a good friend, and he's a great collaborator of ours. Tell us why you're so excited about the topic today.
Well, Prince is just such a meaningful character in my life. I mean, when you asked that, the first thing that popped in my head is being in 7th grade and Purple Rain has just come out, and I was playing Jenny Beaumont's birthday party. Don't ask why that croquet was the name of the game. Like, we played croquet in San Francisco, and the first prize was Purple Rain album, final, and I won it. And that was the beginning of a lifelong obsession. So that just popped in my head, croquet and Prince, a very natural. Everyone thinks of those things too, together, obviously. So I'm so excited because I have a lot of stuff I want to play for you guys that you may have never heard before. So many layers to Let's Go Crazy, beyond it being just an incredible pop song. There's layers of rock and roll. There's layers of heavy metal in there. There's synth pop. It's very, actually, when you drill down into the song, it's actually really very lo-fi in terms of its recording. It's, even though it was a massive global hit, the actual recording itself was very punk rock, very DIY. So in my mind, this song is culturally important for all the reasons we know for Prince to be important. But as a song, it's also kind of an avant-garde, lo-fi, heavy metal, synth pop, rock classic.
It's also, for a lot of people, his introduction to himself. I mean, it opens Purple Rain. There are folks, if you had some, black people who love funk and was really about it, they knew about, for the first couple of Prince albums, but I think vast majority of America probably came on board at Purple Rain, and so this is like the first moment of like,
they weren't buying copies of Dirty Mind. Yeah, the guy standing in the bathtub.
No, that's right. It was kind of like, it was sort of like, if you were a kid especially, it wasn't music you were allowed to listen to necessarily. Controversy, like those are some the controversial lyrics. Like you said it right there, right in the title.
We were not supposed to watch the movie Purple Rain, and I was like watching it as a kid, and I was like, what's wrong? Oh boy. Well, this is I'm not supposed to be watching this right now.
That was my family too. This is the first song on Purple Rain. Let's get it started. This is one song.
So a little backstory to the song. We just kind of alluded to it a moment ago, but this is the introduction to the world for a lot of people of Prince. But Prince was pretty well known in the black community. He was an R&B singer. He had 4 records out actually before this. And to be fair, he had a couple of huge pop records before this too, but he hadn't quite broken through in the way he was about to break through. And part of that was in the album Purple Rain in general, in the movie and the album, but specifically the song, there's an effort to kind of go a little deeper into the rock direction. And part of that is fueled, some interesting things happen a few years earlier, just to back up to 1981. Prince is opening for the Rolling Stones, just 2 shows in Los Angeles, and he actually can't even finish the set because they get booed off stage by this.
That's that booing that you hear on Pop Life, I think, is what I heard.
Right,
when Pop Life breaks off and you hear like people booing and like throwing trash. That's an audio recording of that performance for the Rolling Stones.
That makes sense. And this is like, that's a moment where he's like, I never want to, first of all, tour in front of anyone else again. It's from
So
this
he
point
never opens
forward,
again.
He never opens for anybody again. This is the beginning of his really locking the doors on who he's working with or opening for.
He wants to control the live experience.
The control. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The beginning of this.
And
next
make sure that
era
the
of
fans who were
control.
there are his fans and not.
Yeah. He wanted
Rolling Stones fans.
and it wasn't just let's lock.
Yeah,
the
we all
doors.
know, we saw what happened at Altamont.
Yeah.
Black people don't do well at Rolling Stones.
No,
concerts.
if you're black and the
Don't
Rolling
do
Stones invite you
well.
to tour with them, just say no, thank you,
Risky
Mick
proposition.
Jagger.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, this isn't closing the door, though, on that audience and saying, okay, it's only going to be these guys from now on. It's more like, how do I get those guys? How do I win them over? So there's a real effort to reach for the white audience. And in part, that means going rock. That means adding crunchy guitars, like literally that tactic.
Is it? Can I ask? I don't know.
Yeah,
Of course,
no.
yeah.
Let me ask this question.
Call me out on
Do
that.
we feel
Yeah.
like that's him saying, I got to reach a bigger audience, got to reach, or does it feel like him going deeper into all the stuff he really likes? I feel like when I hear narratives of Tina Turner, when she did her first album after was it Private Dancer?
What's Love Got to
And
Do
when
with it?
and when you look at Michael Jackson and the disco shift, right, from Off the Wall to
Thriller,
Thriller,
where he gets Eddie Van Halen.
the artists are saying like, hey, this is me going deeper into it. And I'm wondering if with Purple Rain, is it both? Is it outreach? Or is it also
love
Prince
that.
saying, hey, I love all this other stuff too?
Or let's take it one step further. It might be Prince saying, "Hey, by the way, I'm better at rock than y'all are." You know what I mean? Like I feel like there's an element of
I think
that
it's a
to it,
little bit
too.
of all that. I think those are great points. I don't think he compromised his sound one bit. It's more like he's adding to the. There's already synth pop songs on like Dirty Mind is a synth pop classic as is, right? Controversy is kind of a synth pop. He's already kind of bringing in new wave, like British white band. Basically, there's already an interplay in his music where he's mixing up different genres and different audiences.
It's so weird to hear you describe really quickly. To hear you describe it as rock, which is accurate.
Yeah.
Because we all receive it as pop.
Yeah.
Like, we all received all that stuff as this is just pop music. It was on top 40 radio. It wasn't on like the rock station.
It seems like over time the definition of pop always changes to what's ever truly popular because there are
that makes
times in the
sense.
past when pop was rock and then pop was hip hop for a little bit, and right now I would say like all that dance music that felt underground in the 2000s is basically what Dua Lipa and all the pop artists are doing now. They're just singing lyrics over it.
Yeah.
One last thing I want to say about Prince doing rock. When the first British invasion happens, you get all these black artists, and we're going to talk about Little Richard as well this episode, but you get these people who are like black musicians who are like, hey, these British people are doing what we invented. Let's show them that we do it better.
Right.
Yeah.
And I feel like when, Human League and all these people are basically doing the British,
Right.
This British invasion is doing their own version of disco and black music, with drum machines. And Prince is like, oh yeah, I can do that.
Yes, he can.
I can do that just like y'all. So
can do it better than anyone
it's
else.
not even that he's copying the white musicians. He's saying like, hey, I'm gonna show you where this all came from.
Right. Well, and to be fair, this is also a moment where like whatever a decade into, maybe it's longer than that, a period of time where there's so like top 40 radio is so eclectic. You have so much going on. White, black, country, rock. Everything is sort of simultaneously listening to each other. It's not striated in the way it used to be. There used to be black stations and there used to be white stations.
But I think the other thing also that's for me very incredible it's one of those things like when you see certain artists are so good, you have to like think about them in retrospect for all the different parts of them that were good, because at the time you're just receiving it. Like it's interesting with Prince, as you say again, it is rock. I'm just sort of struggling with that idea a little bit because I'm like it's so wild because he was also really good at writing really great original melodies, right? Like it didn't sound like.
Let's Go
anything else.
Crazy has one of the greatest guitar riffs of
Doesn't
all
sound
time.
like anything anybody had heard
Right.
before. So it's like I think that's the hardest thing in music. I think writing a pop melody that people who don't know you will be humming later is like that's the golden standard. That's the hardest thing to do, and that's why most of us can't make music.
Okay, so really quick, you have the stems for this song, which is something that I've never had the chance to hear. What are you going to play for us first?
Well, we're going to start with the drums, and just to quickly sort of complete that, I love that conversation. And one thing I just want to say about as we're going deep into the song, you start to hear things that I hadn't noticed either till I was doing my archaeological dig.
Yeah.
We're going to be hearing some of these sounds so explicitly, you're like, oh, he really did put those crunchy guitars in the mix. And whether or not you sort of feel it because there's so much happening, the subtlety of production in that process is how he balances things out so you don't necessarily know you're listening to a heavy metal song, but there's a heavy metal song in there. So you don't believe me, just watch, because we are going to get into that.
Okay, Trinidad James.
All right, so I do have the stems for Let's Go Crazy so we can hear all the different parts. The first thing I want to start with, though, is the drums. So what's interesting and somewhat innovative about this is that we're going to start with a drum machine. Prince is really famous for being, as we were just discussing, a master programmer of specifically the LN1 drum machine. He made it his, like the LN1 is the iconic Prince drum machine that he tamed and created sounds. Because you have to understand, you buy this device and it's got a preset kick, preset snare, got a hi-hat, and everyone who buys it, it sounds the same until you start getting in there and tweaking it. And at the time, people weren't really doing that.
And by the way, you have to address, and this is a thing that's timeless in music. Yeah. You got to address the haters because some old musicians are like, man, he's pushing buttons.
Yes,
he's pushing buttons.
That's my take.
And we're hearing it going, oh, this is genius.
Remember that point? I want you to make that point. Play us some drums.
But we don't have that context anymore.
It's funny to hear it in the build too, because you have to remember we're going to be building from the ground up. So it starts simple, but that's for a reason. So here is literally the Lynn drum beat from Let's Go Crazy.
Almost could be from like 10 different Prince songs.
That is it is from 10
Prince it feels like that's
the same drum machine. And that same
but even the cadence feels like
I'm delirious.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
So he's not getting crazy with the patterns necessarily, but he is messing around with the sounds and that kind of infamous knocking beat. I'll play that isolated because this to me, like when you hear this, it exists in the drum machine. But to get it to sound like that, in other words, it's one of your sound options. But to get it to sound like
it's a
Prince,
program.
You got to do stuff.
You got to pitch it down. You got to run it through a flanger. You got to compress it. And in order to do that in 1982, you got to be some kind of mad professor, basically.
Diallo and I had the luxury,
if you will,
of going to college with.
We have to mention his name 3 times in the show.
And I do appreciate that.
We had the luxury of going to college with Ryan Leslie, and I think one of the things that aside from not studying, I was always so impressed with just because we got a chance to watch him make a few songs. And I would say with Prince, I've always heard, and I don't know, you probably know better, that he was kind of grew up with his own little garage situation, right? Where he was experimenting and playing with sounds and really learning all this stuff. Yeah, like a basement thing.
In that house, whatever you call it.
Kids, parents, buy your kids a bunch of like equipment and stuff.
Yeah.
Like.
And that comes in handy later when he's on tour with Rick James. We'll get into that story in a minute.
The beefiest tour in history, by the way.
But here, I just want to play for you that iconic Prince song, because you and I have talked about it before.
Yes.
When you hear this isolated thing, that's Prince programming the drums, because he puts that specific sound.
He pitches it down.
He runs
it through a flanger.
That's right.
I can hear it now.
And here it is in the mix again, just so you hear what that sounds like. That's a Prince beat when he throws that little crack, crack, whatever you want to call it.
Somebody once said that like the way that Prince made those drums sound so good, I've always said it killed off a generation of black drummers because like you've got Ndugu Chancellor who plays, I hope I'm pronouncing his last name right, plays Billie Jean like to iconic perfection. Who was the guy? Was it Benny Benjamin who was in the Funk Brothers? Okay. Like you had all these black guys who had been playing the drums.
Clyde Stubblefield.
Yes. Oh, exactly.
James Brown.
Of course. And all of a sudden, because I'm a kid of the 80s, all of a sudden, because of the timing and because of the technology and just the appreciation I feel like our generation had for like the 808, like we kind of, I personally preferred this sound. Nowadays, like I love the imperfections that I hear, and you and I are both drummers. But I love the imperfection that you hear from a live drummer. But like, man, like Bashir was just saying, there had to be people over here at the record plant or like Sunset Studios.
Man,
like,
cut that off.
Right. Hey, man, cut off that miss.
But what's interesting too?
They were mad at AI before writers were mad at AI.
Yeah.
I think it does both. I think it kills off some careers, but it also forces others to evolve. Yes. I'm thinking of that famous drum beat because I did a deep dive on this one night when I was, not parenting, and the drum beat from 777.
That's Morris.
So I thought it's Morris, but I
Morris,
thought it was a live drummer. It was that drum beat, according to the internet, according to the guy who played it, was actually pre-programmed into the machine by the guy who made the machine as like a crazy beat that nobody could ever do.
Really? Okay.
I
believe you. I believe you.
Listen, the comments will say everything.
Yeah, we'll find out.
I watched the video on YouTube, but apparently he programmed that in. But then the guy who plays for Morris is his name
Jellybean.
Right.
Yeah.
He learned that, and they were like, "You playing it?" He was playing it live.
Oh,
so I think for some drummers, the drum machine made them step their game up.
Let me tell you, I just found out today while prepping for this episode that the drums on Wanna Be Starting Something are just a drum machine. Yeah. So sometimes when I thought it was a live drummer, it wasn't.
You know, it's kind of funny we're talking about this either or thing with regards to drum machines versus live drummers, because in this song, in Let's Go Crazy, what he's doing, which is pretty innovative, is he's mixing that Lynn that we were just listening to with Bobby Z playing live drums. And check this out. I'll play it for you in a moment. But what you're about to hear is Bobby Z, the drummer for The Revolution, playing live drums, but it's a combination of, you know, drums that you're used to and triggering another Lynn drum. So when he hits a snare, it's actually the sound of this. It's crazy how complicated this is in 1983, no less. And this is the result.
The olden times.
The olden
I was
times.
there. I saw it.
Oldie 1983.
The British had just invaded the Falklands.
It was horrible.
Here's the live drums, and then I'll play them for you in the mix with the Lynn, and that's what you hear on the final. But here are just the isolated, and this is recorded, by the way, one last crazy step at a rehearsal. This is so unprofessional. Like, this is super punk DIY. So as you can hear, they're playing it live in the studio. It's also got like the Lynn drum playing, which they're playing too.
Yeah.
And in the mix, here's all of the drums on Let's Go Crazy Together. I've obviously fussed with the levels a little bit.
Even hearing that, though, it just reminds me that the one thing that music and writing kind of have in common is sometimes you come up with an interesting idea and you don't know where it goes yet. And I definitely think when you hear, you know, Purple Rain, you're hearing probably 10 years, right? 15 years of things that he's like, oh, he came up with that 6 years ago and he didn't tell anybody. One day I'm going to figure out where that goes, right? Now it's like it all comes together. And if you're lucky, you're how old was he when they like 22 or something, 24?
25, I think.
Yeah, but that seems like about this. It's funny because I know that now there's so many parts of great art that didn't all come at the same time.
Right, right. You just kind of carry it with you till the right moment.
I want to talk about the Revolution.
Let's talk about the Revolution.
Can you explain who the Revolution was and why did Prince form a band? I mean, like, I remember his first album, For You, I think is the title. Like, there's no real, it just says Prince. But by Purple Rain, it's Prince of the Revolution. Right. Why did Prince form a band and how did they change the sound?
So there's a lot of like information about this out there. We don't really know what Prince's thinking was at the time, but I will say that knowing that he was a huge fan of Sly and the Family Stone, and a huge fan of Fleetwood Mac, I think
both
that
multi-gender groups.
Yeah, as he was piecing
both well, not Fleetwood Mac, but Sly is, you know, especially for a generation, it's that group that was multicultural.
Yeah,
and the fact that they had people on sort of unorthodox instruments for the stereotype of those instruments had a lot to do with
and I get the sense
Revolution.
that growing up, like looking back, I wasn't there at the time, but it feels a little bit like they were the coolest band of 1971. I just get this sense that what they were doing musically, because it was so influential.
It was exciting. It was exciting for those who were there.
And it was bringing together elements of rock and funk and pop. So it's a lot of the DNA that Prince later takes. And by the way, I've been to Paisley Park, and there's a giant mural on the wall of all of his heroes. And he's got Sly and the Family Stone is up there, and he's got Joni Mitchell up there, and
that's great.
Carlos Santana. Some of these were surprises even to me, but Fleetwood Mac is
Shaka
up there
on the
too.
wall? Did Shaka make the wall?
Oh, good question. I gotta look that one up. I
we'll
wouldn't be
have to look
surprised
that
because clearly he
Shaka
wrote.
Khan?
Yeah.
They're not contemporaries?
They are, but I mean, like, he absolutely loved it.
Oh, yeah,
There's certain people who he always came back to.
I still love Shaka.
Me too.
But even as you were talking, I was like, it's so crazy that both Sly, both Prince take all these elements, have all these influences, and yet it's still unutterably black, right? It's still has this one last layer of filtering through, and it's almost a vibe of like the streets are gonna like this, because you know, for both of those guys, like that,
it was
the
important.
streets had to like it. Like,
it was important for them to have that credibility,
and then also that type of artist development does not happen anymore.
Yeah,
you don't get Purple Rain unless you go through For You, Dirty Mind, but nowadays, if those first two aren't hits, and then the irony is that those first two then define your sound now, so you better not try and change it and evolve it to get to Purple Rain.
And those first two albums, like, they're the least listened to, at least in my collection.
It's such a artists have it really stacked against them nowadays.
I will say
you can't evolve.
Every now and then an artist is allowed to grow just because they have enough out there. I feel like Tame Impala is somebody who has absolutely started one place and he's got like 8 or 9
He's in the Barbie
albums.
movie.
Well, he added more black fans. I'll tell you that.
Huh?
With the song Rihanna sampled, I mean, I think a lot of black folk got on board during that one. I like her version, but I love the original.
Yeah, it's great.
So we were talking before about like how there's a lot of surprises inside the song. One of them to me, when I first heard it, was I thought I maybe had turned up something too loud because it didn't sound right, but it's actually the bass guitar really does sound like this, and you're going to be very surprised. Now, just between you and me, I would call that like disgusting in a good way. Like
No,
that
that's
is
great.
that is a distorted, dirty bass.
That's
right
brown
there.
mark, right?
That is brown mark on bass. Exactly
yeah,
right.
brown mark on bass.
You must know there must have been some, again, looking at, because we never think about the there must have been some older engineers that were like, what is this?
Well, you know,
I clean that bass up for you in 2 seconds. What are you doing? You know, and it's like, no, I want it like that.
Yeah, no, you're
That's
nailing it though with that
nasty.
question about the engineer, because a big part of the Prince story sort of begins on this record. He starts to work with this woman named Susan Rogers, who for the next few years becomes his absolute confidant. This woman who actually wasn't herself an engineer. She was trained in actually getting like the engineering aspects of a studio together, but not being an engineer. And he really
Is that because he wanted to kind of quietly be the engineer? Is
well,
that what that is?
he wanted someone he could trust. And so he met her a few times and just got a vibe about her. And one day called her out of the blue and said, come over. Like he's not giving a lot of instructions, just come over. And when she arrived, she learned that her job that day was to help Prince record a song. She didn't expect that at all. It wasn't her forte. It wasn't something she'd done before. But because he had seen something in Susan Rogers that he trusted, and that was the beginning of a long working relationship that includes the Purple Rain album, Around the World in the Day, like all the way through, I think, Purple Rain, Parade, excuse me. And a big part of that is the trust, exactly what you're talking about. She wasn't somebody who was going to judge what he was doing. He wanted to have the freedom to feel like he could experiment by himself and like make mistakes and not be embarrassed or be called out, like you said.
Yeah. I want to hear the guitar because I don't think that in the Pantheon, you always hear, you know, especially guys who are rock guys of a certain age. I feel like Prince doesn't come up in their conversations enough as one of the best guitarists of all time. And when I think about the guitar, I especially think about that guitar solo at the end. I don't even know how pop radio and black radio, like, how long is the guitar solo? It's a long guitar solo. I want to hear the guitar solo. I want you to tell me about it after we hear it.
Okay, we're going to get into all that stuff. And if you like that distorted crunchiness, you're going to love the guitars because there's even more going on here. And specifically with Susan Rogers, this was the beginning of his working relationship with Prince, was recording the guitars you're about to hear. Here's the second of 3 guitar tracks. So now let me play all of that for you together in the mix. This is all the guitars and the bass together on Prince's Let's Go Crazy. Or is it a Metallica song? One thing I love about delving into this is that as we go from section to section, it is such a balancing act. Because so far we were just balancing the drums, the Lynn drum and the live drum. And now we've just heard a really pretty heavy set of guitars. But the next section we're going to get to after we can talk about this, but after we get to is the synths, and things start to get balanced out. And that's the crazy vision that Prince had, that all of these things in the mix, there wouldn't be anything that was too much of one.
Before we play the synth,
yes,
I really want to hear the guitar solo at the end of the song.
Oh, yeah, we have to play that.
Hendrixian.
Come on.
See, I didn't even hear that one. I mean, come on, man.
Oh, God.
I don't play the guitar. I don't ever really hear anything that makes me want to play the guitar, but I hear that and I wish I could play the guitar.
It's so tasty.
It also
It's
feels
so
like a
good.
message too. Like, again, you know, we're isolating it, but in the context of American pop music, you know, there's people try to diminish you, right? So the people saying like, well, he's just a pop artist, and yeah, he used some elements. Prince is going, no, like you, I can actually shred like Jimi Hendrix.
I
like,
just blew Motley
right.
Crue out of the water.
got rid of all those people. Now what are you gonna say? You know what I'm
That's
saying?
right.
It's like it's almost like when Drake sings sometimes. It's like, yeah, I can write raps, but I can also sing. So I can be on the pop chart and the hip hop chart at the same time. Now what are you gonna say?
I mean,
that's right.
I just think that's when I think about guitar solos, like I know I'm supposed to say certain artists, but I always think about that guitar solo.
Okay, so the next part I want to play is all the keyboards. There's a lot of synths going on in this song, and I was talking before about the balance. This is the balancing act. For all those crunchy guitars, we have a lot of surprisingly dinky, I'm going to use the word. That's not a very technical word, but it always strikes me as dinky, some of the synths in here. I think you'll agree once you hear them. Dinky.
Bring on the dank.
Bring on the dank. We can do this first. It's dinky.
You know what's interesting? It's almost baseball.
Sounds like a baseball.
You're right.
It's almost like a baseball.
Coming up to bat in 1983, Dale Murphy.
I know who that is.
That's for the Braves. That's Lisa, right? From Wendy and Lisa playing that.
Lisa Coleman on keyboards.
Yeah.
Some of it might be Prince, actually. So some Prince, some Lisa.
Yeah, I
I'm not
always
sure which is
assume that
which. Yeah.
it's I won't diminish these musicians, but I just know how like genius artists are.
Yeah.
They will do that shit themselves in the studio, but then when you see him on stage, everybody's sharing in the duties. But it's nice to hear that he did have his musicians. But I know sometimes I'm like, well, I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna do it.
I have to give a shout out to this incredible book where I got a lot of my facts from. There's this guy called Dwayne Tudall, and he has this book where it's a 400-page book documenting every day in Prince's life from 1983 to 1984.
Questlove
and there's a second edition I just bought, which is 85 to 86. But in this book, he's documenting, and he's gone back he's talked to Susan Rogers, who I just mentioned. He's gone into the archives. He's looked at all the tapes. There's a degree to which, from that archival research, we can kind of know a little bit about what happened, but there's still some mysteries. We do know that the live stuff that I showed you before, the drums and the bass and the guitar, that was all recorded by the band in a rehearsal space. But we also know then he went into the studio with Susan to do some overdubs. So to your point, we don't know what got kept and what got replaced.
It's not about dissing the musicians he works with. It's just about understanding the perfectionism of a really great artist and knowing that deep down, I mean, they just want to like,
I've got a perfect example coming up because if you remember, by the way, I should point out that the version of the song that's recorded, when you listen to the recording on Spotify, it's 4 minutes long. But everyone who's seen the movie knows that
it's long.
There's a 7-minute song. Yeah. And the recording itself is actually 7 minutes. They just cut it down for radio.
There's that whole thing that Prince does at the keyboard.
So that's what I wanted to talk about. In the movie, you'll see Prince jump in on the keyboards playing this frankly hilarious piano solo, which I freaking love.
It's frantic.
I'm going to play it for you for a second. Here's a little bit of this crazy, frantic solo in the middle. It's like a ragtime.
Yeah, I was just going to say this sounds like
Scott Joplin. So this is actually not.
Can I hear that? Can I hear that with the instrumentation over it?
Oh yeah. You mean just the whole song?
Yeah. Okay. But that part of the song, because you can hear it in the mix.
Now I'll play that in the mix. And it's a little less crazy in the mix, but still a little crazy.
Like this is the Wario version.
Yeah. The Bizarro Superman version.
Yeah, he understands the complementary nature of those sounds, right? Like it does not sound to me cacophonic at all.
No, it's not.
It sounds like that goes together.
That totally works.
It's like a palate cleanser in the middle of a song.
But to your point, that's actually Matt Fink playing that keyboard solo. But in the movie, Prince liked it so much, he's like, I'm gonna make sure the world thinks it's me.
We should talk about Minneapolis here because I am a Prince disciple. I think the man is an absolute genius, but I think there are so many solid people working with him.
Yeah.
You know, like, because if you look at their resumes, like the most obvious examples are Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, who work with Flight Time and Time. Morris Day, Dr. Fink goes on to work with a lot of really successful bands afterwards. And there's some freaking brilliance there too. I think, to me, and we'll get into it later about what's your favorite Prince album, but I will say right here of his bands, New Power Generation, some of the other ones, the things that came before, I think it takes nothing away from Prince to say that the Revolution had some freaking heavy hitters.
I've heard people describe the Revolution as the Mount Rushmore of Prince's Prince
if you have to rank his bands or whatever, like
it's Wendy, Lisa,
Purple Rain. We'll get into
Mark,
Purple Rain on another episode, but like the Wendy and Lisa Purple Rain is well documented. I think Minneapolis cannot be overstated.
But it's interesting you bring up Minneapolis, Diallo, because I also feel like there's another thing, which is the other thing about Prince I find really interesting, and he shares it with a lot of black folks, including somebody he went on tour with. I don't know what it is, but for some reason, places that you don't usually identify with black folks tend to put out some of the blackest. I'm thinking about the Gap Band in Tulsa.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about Rick James in Buffalo.
Yep.
Prince is in Minneapolis. These are not places
Sir
that
Mix-a-Lot.
But even
in Seattle.
But even think about, I was even thinking about like Timberland in Virginia. Like Virginia is a very black place.
Well, we did a
like,
whole episode about all the black people came out of Virginia.
But you don't think of it as, when I was coming up, Virginia was not on the short list of cities that you would list as places that great black
Virginia's got
music's
Timbo and Pharrell.
So anyway, the point is all
so
you
many.
black people who are in like Peoria,
Nebraska.
Illinois.
If you're in Nebraska and you feel all alone,
if you're in
make some music.
Wyoming, that's somebody already there. If you're in South Dakota and you're black, you need to be making music
Just
because
start
I
making
think
music.
you got something special.
I love where this conversation is going. There's so much to touch on. But when we come back, Prince's vocals in the raw are not easy to come by. But after the break, you will hear his isolated voice as we go deeper into Let's Go Crazy. We'll be right back. Okay, so this last piece is the vocals, and I'm so excited about this because I want to hear Prince's raw, untreated vocals.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a reason why we're spending so much time on the stems for this song, because this is one of the most delicious songs to go.
I know we could do
into.
3 episodes on just this song, but we don't have the time because Kevin Hart do one
Thanks, pal.
episode.
Thanks, buddy.
What about Prince's vocals?
So as Diallo set up, there is so much to get into in the vocals. I'm really excited to play it for you. Let's start with the iconic intro, which you're used to hearing with the organ, but here it is, Prince, Isolated for You.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to get through this thing called life. Electric word, life, it means forever, and that's a mighty long time. But I'm here to tell you, there's something else. The afterworld.
Can we get into the singing? I think we probably want to hear the singing.
If you don't like the world you're living in, take a look around you. At least you got friends. You see, I call my old lady for a friendly word. She just picked up the phone, dropped it on the floor. Was all I heard.
I mean,
I don't know who wants to go first, but my God, go ahead.
So this is one of those things where you hear a song forever and never actually listen to the real lyrics. Is he saying he called up his girl and then she dropped the phone and somebody was in there smashing? Is that
no, I think she started masturbating.
Oh,
she
masturbating,
got
okay.
so
Oh.
into what he was
I
talking
assumed it
about.
was
That was my interpretation.
Yeah,
too,
it was another guy
I
in
think
there.
that she
Or
picked up the
girl.
phone, dropped on the floor because she was having sex. That's what I read.
Oh, I thought Prince just turned her on.
Guys, if anybody was around Prince when he was recording that line,
On
Can we
August
is it
7th, 1983.
masturbation or is somebody getting boned? Let us know.
I
other
think
Go
he
ahead.
sounds amazing. Can I hear one part in particular?
Yeah.
Can I hear at the very end of the guitar solo? I'm pretty sure he says "Take me away," but I
Yeah.
want to hear that part
Okay.
untreated, just because that always sounded so guttural.
You know what? I take requests on this show, so let's do that.
Take me away!
Woo! That'll wake you up in the morning.
Well, that actually one of the two things as I was listening, I wanted to say. Number one is how distorted it is. That is
Yeah.
not a
No,
perfectly.
he's on the microphone like that.
That is not a professionally engineered vocal in any sense of the word. Nor were the guitars we heard. Nor were the drums. This is a very lo-fi, cheap production, but that is so freaking cool.
But
and
it's so
punk rock of
intentional.
him.
But it's intentional. And
It's
again,
intentional.
you have to have the context of what was everybody else doing. I think the thing about artists I love is that they're always looking around going, everything around me sucks. And let me show you why. That's the motivation. So he's hearing all this clean ass music, all this perfection, and he's going, I can make a pop song that has muddy vocals, distortion, that you have keyboards that in the middle of it there's like a ragtime Charlie,
Yeah,
what's his
crazy.
name, Scott Joplin vibe
Yeah.
going on. And yet it's still like #1 pop record on the planet.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's
And
such
we're gonna get into that because I want to talk about this song's place in music at the time and ask some questions about what we see again. Before we move on from vocals, can we hear? I think you said that there's some female vocals underneath Prince.
Let me play that for you. First, the other thing, by the way, the other point I just wanted to quickly make was as we were listening to that, I had this kind of feeling of like it being intrusive. Like as we were listening to Prince, like
Right.
I felt his vulnerability because I kind of pictured him alone in the studio. He's made everyone leave,
Yeah.
He's closed the door. Susan Rogers, this new engineer who he's just decided to trust, is also not looking at him because that's a big thing. He made sure no one was looking at him. And I really felt that as we heard his isolated
too.
vocal, this
I
sort
did
of
too.
frightened artist, not frightened, but like, vulnerable artist is the right word.
Do we know what take this was? Do we know how many? Like I know on some of these songs we've done, we know what take. Like Smells Like Teen Spirit, it was
don't.
like take 4.
But it also
that ended
feels
up
like
being the
him-
recording. Like, do we
don't.
know which take this is? Okay.
I feel like great artists also, again, we're talking about this is 6 albums in. So he's had 5 albums of the goofy engineers looking at him and him like being like, that's distracting.
over it.
We work with people like that where
You
it's
just
like
burned some bridges with the
certain
engineer
things,
community.
you know, yeah, whoever makes Prince's second album, yeah. But you know what I'm saying? Like he's creating the conditions in order to create something truly special. And that's so important that he grew up enough to be able to say, no, everybody get out. Susan looked that way. And then that's going to lead me where I need to go versus as we all have to do constantly making these compromises. Sure, this is your cousin. She can come in. Yeah, we're going to make the song. Okay, you know what I'm saying? Like there's...
And you know what you're making me think of, because this is a constant thing I've even had in my own life, is you're kind of, when you're an artist, you're kind of more coming from the perspective of I want to make a song.
Yes.
And you're working with people who are like, I know how the machines work. And there's a dialectic between them. And I've personally felt it with instrument playing too. I always had this sort of dynamic growing up with like Eddie Van Halen and these, you know, monster guitar players, this idea that technical proficiency matters and that sonic perfection matters and that doing it the right way matters is a really oppressive force in the creative culture. Part of why George Martin is given so much credit for the Beatles is because he protected them from the engineers in the white coats at Abbey Road who were saying, turn it down, it's too loud.
Yeah.
George Martin was the guy who said, but
This isn't how the Hollies would do it.
But it sounds good, and this is new. What we're doing is new and different. That's why you've never heard it before.
Or Timbaland being like, I hate every sound in my studio. I'm gonna walk around junkyards, you know, for a month and just hit shit
sounds.
until I hear some new sounds. And it's like only an artist can you know.
Right.
Again, one of the other things I love about this show is
You guys got to do a Timbaland episode. By the way.
we taught it. We did a Missy Elliott
He's
version
so like
episode.
innovative.
But
right?
I think that, you know, just to close out this conversation, I think, again, one of the things I really love about doing this show is that you realize that no matter how big a song is, no matter how, you know, famous a singer is, at the end of the day, he had to go into that studio and lay down a vocal.
Yeah.
And that's where all creativity starts, is that at some point it's nothing and then it's something. And it's not just Prince on the track. Female vocals, I hear some, I actually heard some bleed in his headphones while he was singing. I feel like Whitney and Lisa are probably on the song.
There's some really fun moments with them and doing some harmonies. Let's
hear that real quick.
Let's listen to them.
Are we gonna let the elevator bring us down? Oh no, let's go!
Go crazy.
There we go.
Go crazy! Let's go! Let's go!
I hear how much fun they're having.
By the way, that sounds like Blitzkrieg pop. I love that they were bringing so many different stuff.
Let's go!
And I love that they just brought like, they weren't like,
It's like Ramones.
Yeah.
You know?
They're not like these like Diana Ross perfection singers.
Not at all.
But they're just like the right vibe. And it's just the right, it's one of those things I think about when I think about like Kanye West telling Jamie Foxx like how to sing on slow jams, right? And Jamie tells the story about he's doing all this stuff. And Kanye's like, no, you kind of just want to keep it really simple here because this is what hip hop is. And I just love that with this version, Prince and Whitney, at least, you know, some old ones, and it was like, look, I could get you Carole King, okay? I know Carole King, she'll come in, she'll do the vocal. And he's like, no, I want this.
Yeah, they want the imperfection, and it brings
this is the sound I'm doing.
We've heard literally the lo-fi recording, we've heard the big crunchy guitars, and we hear the imperfect vocals, and part of it aesthetically is he's by the way, we've just had punk rock come in, and we just had new wave and post-punk. He's obviously listening to that. He's a big fan of the B-52s. We had those dinky little synths before. Those could have been B-52s synths. We could have had Fred Schneider on vocals.
Yeah.
It's the same like lo-fi.
Let's go crazy.
Crazy.
Let's get nuts.
You know Fred be in the shower tearing that song up to this day. He should have had me on the song. Let's go.
So we've heard many different parts of this song, all the different parts, and how it equaled to something that was greater than those parts. But now I want to take a big step back and just talk about Prince the artist and his legacy. I mean, he has so many records, so much music. Right off the bat, I just kind of want to ask you, Bashir, what's your favorite Prince album?
That is a good question. It probably has to be. It's probably Purple Rain. Now tonight on the way home, I'll be like, "Oh no, it was
Sign of the Times."
Love Sexy." But I'm so impressed that again, I think the hardest thing in music is writing a pop melody. I think it is both the quickest way to be successful, but it's also so out of reach. And there's some people who, after a time in their career, they can't do it anymore. They try, they just can't. And so, anytime somebody has an album, Prince has this, Michael has this. I think back then they demanded it more, where 95% of the album could be your single. That's rare. You don't have that nowadays. Like nowadays,
And listen,
it's two tracks you love,
Yeah.
and the rest you kind of feel like
there's always
There
some
are
filler.
no duds on
shit.
There's
this.
always
Not a
some
single
filler.
dud on
Don't
Purple
put
Rain.
this out.
Not a
I've been
single
saying
dud.
for a long time. By the way, I think the answer to the question for me is Purple Rain.
And me too.
And yours
Yeah,
too.
it's simple.
So now I kind
just
of want
feels
to. I
too
want to
easy,
ask an
but it's true,
incendiary
right?
question. So, off of Bashir's point, we like to play this game called Perfect Album, but you gotta lose one.
Oh,
Okay.
And
so
it's
painful.
Freaking painful.
Mm.
But let's go down the line. So the songs on Purple Rain are "Let's Go Crazy," "Take Me With You," the beautiful ones, "Computer Blue," "Darling Nikki," "When Doves Cry,"
All right,
"I Would Die for You," "Baby I'm a Star," "Purple Rain."
You haven't named a dud yet,
Let's
man.
no, listen.
I
And
have
we
it.
go into this conversation not saying that any of these songs are bad, but we are being
Yeah.
forced to lose
Okay.
one. Bashir, what is your choice?
It's gonna have to be "Darling Nikki" because I remember. Well, first off, Diallo, there's no good answers. They're all
I didn't say that. That was
unremovable.
luxury.
luxury. There's no good answers. Y'all sounded like y'all been doing the show so long. I just heard what? I was like, that's Diallo doubting me. That's Diallo.
He just
Ritter.
met me. I mean, we've never been in the same room before.
No, I would just say it's got to be "Darling Nikki" because that's the one that I remember was like you couldn't listen to it because your parents were like, you better not listen to that song. But I would also say that as beautiful and perfect as it is, I don't think I listen to that as much as the other stuff.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Luxury, what's yours?
Can I just counter that with one? I want to try
Sure.
to win you back to my side because just listen. You
Hold
may
on,
not
it's
have
an
noticed
amazing
it
song,
before.
by the way. We're not arguing if it's incredible. It's incredible.
I'm sure you know the song inside and out, but
Yes.
just listen. The drums at the end. Just listen to the drums at the end. Drumming right there. Wait, hold on.
Then it also goes to that reverse part. Too, right?
Yeah. This part alone.
Let me say what though. Since we're being extra critical, Diallo, it takes a long time to get to that part. Right? That ain't. They
Fair
don't start
enough.
with that.
Fair enough. I hear you. Was that your answer?
It has to be because
Okay.
it's sort of like you can't pick anything else.
What
about
about
it.
your?
Yeah.
response
Well,
here?
you know, we're almost out of time, so let's move on to the next section. We've talked.
Wait. What's your answer?
Now that you guys are on record, let's close this one out.
Now that you're on record
That's
hating
not right.
Prince,
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. On a serious note, for Prince's legacy, the thing that I really love about Prince, and I want to
What
talk
song
about
would
this.
you drop, bro?
he's really not going to answer this question.
Oh no, I'll answer in a second. I'm gonna
okay.
I'm gonna get there.
Hold on, I'll be right back.
I'm gonna get there. For me, the thing that I love about Prince so much is, and I was thinking about this, even if Little Richard is, you know, the inventor of rock and roll, if you have to single it down to one person, I truly do believe that. I think there's so much that we
Agreed.
take for granted about rock and roll and rhythm and blues that we directly link to one guy, which
Yep.
is insane when you dig
Tutti
deep.
frutti.
The king of rock and roll, as he used to say.
Hell yeah.
You know, he's, by the way, he would say, there is no Prince without the king.
Yes.
And Prince notably stayed away from throwing his name in his list of influences,
That's
which is
a good point.
interesting.
Well, they
That's
probably
a
had a
good point.
personality.
I think there was
Yeah.
some personality
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
happening there, but I will say this: the thing I love about Prince is that I don't think we'll ever see another person like him again. I also just really appreciate as a person who appreciates so many different types of music
Mhm.
that I can listen to rock Prince. I can listen to slow jam R&B Prince, like
Funk
the one
Prince.
who did "Damn You," which is basically just a real slow R&B song.
Yeah.
Like,
Black Album
there's so
Prince.
many Black Album Prince.
Yeah.
I actually do really appreciate Diamond and Pearls Prince.
Can you do the bat dance?
I would never do the Bad Dance,
Okay.
but I like the Bad Dance a lot, and I
Okay.
think that Shaun of the Dead was wrong. I think that's actually a very good album. I'm just gonna say about Prince is that he opened up the format, like the fact that "Let's Go Crazy" is 192 BPMs,
Yeah.
96 if you want to have it and get into the
Yeah,
DJ
yeah, yeah.
technicalness of that. Like, it's extremely fast, and the fact that he could do all these different types and everybody accepted it. It's like, oh yeah, that's Prince. He's basically, you know, an R&B/pop artist.
Yeah.
Like, that means so much to me. And I always wonder, will we see another person who can skate across all these other genres effectively and in the same way? I feel like nowadays people in their own unique way are more constricted.
Well, here's the thing, right? So back in the day, as with our field of television, you had to fight. There was 3 channels.
Mm-hmm.
So there was basically, you know, a bloodbath to get on those 3 channels. Now there are infinite channels
Yeah.
between streaming, traditional, and the internet.
I think we have a fast channel. I think, somewhere. It's like-
The point I'm making is this: is that again, I'm a broken record on this, but you got to consider context. Prince is looking at Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
In his brain, knowing how good he is. There's only one human being on this planet. maybe better than me. He probably can't even say the word, right? But Michael's out there. And so that, I think, is a tremendous amount of pressure on him. And I think that's where you get some of this beautiful stuff. It's like Diamonds, because there was pressure on
You know
that
the Bad
Cole.
story, right? The story about Bad.
They have many stories together, but I haven't heard this one.
No, the Bad
this is a
story.
great
Like,
Oh,
story.
the
so
Bad story. No, I haven't heard that.
Michael contacts the people, Prince's people, and saying, I want, this is a duet.
I want to do a song.
I got a
with
song, it's a
Prince.
duet.
So
It's
he
called
offered
Bad.
an olive branch.
He gave him the olive branch. He's like, I got a song. I want it to be a
We're gonna
duet.
song called
Song is
Bad.
called Bad. Prince gets the lyric sheet. He's like,
And the
first
first
line
thing
is,
he sees
first
is
line is, your butt is mine.
Prince is like, I ain't interested.
You're not saying that to me, and I ain't saying that to you. So it's not happening.
That's funny.
He told that
There's
story to
also a
Chris
story
Rock.
about how Prince. I saw this on YouTube the other day. I think he was originally supposed to be in the We Are the World thing, right?
Oh, really?
He's not in that.
Yeah, he's not in it.
No,
He's noticeably absent. Yeah.
It's a Where Am I Standing? Who is Michael there? It's again, it's not about. Look, unfortunately, we like to think everybody's friends, but the truth of the matter is, great art
Yeah.
comes from people being like, I'm competing with that guy.
Yeah.
So in Prince's mind, there's one person he's constantly competing with. And he's like, I can beat that dude. And then I think that's what leads us to all this greatness. And I'm here for it. But
Well, listen to half of our stories are about like
Yeah.
his size and about being surprised how short he was as he skirts across the room with his high heels and all this.
Yeah.
He obviously, it's so obvious it's barely worth saying, but he had sort of a complex about his height. And it clearly went into a lot of the competition. He's apparently one of the best basketball players that ever lived,
Right,
if you
right.
believe all the anecdotes about him.
Well, he was on his basketball team, and he was really
Yeah,
good.
and instrumentally speaking, he isn't just one of the greatest songwriters and singers. He's also one of the greatest one of the greatest guitar players that's ever lived. He's up there with Hendrix and whoever else. Like as we just heard in that guitar solo, this is a sick guitar player. He's doing all of this and the songwriting and the composing, and every day he writes a song. His whole rest of his life.
But the
Obsessed.
ability to write a pop hit. There's so many musicians who Diallo and I, when I was living in New York, I would have to go see him, and they'd be like, oh, you got to go see this guy, you got to go see that girl. And the musicianship was outstanding. The ability to write a pop song was not there.
Mhm.
It is unusual
Yeah,
to have
that's a
all of
special
that
skill.
stuff.
Absolutely.
I'll probably say Darling Nikki too. Not because I don't think it's a classic. And by the way, I didn't even know what masturbating meant when I just knew it sounded like
we
a
talked
crazy.
about
know
Let's
now?
Go Crazy.
It sounded like a crazy word.
Doesn't Let's Go
and I
Crazy
knew that my
end?
parents cringed every time that.
Excuse me.
part of the
Doesn't
movie
Let's Go
happened.
Crazy end with Please Come? Please come. Am I wrong about that? Is that
No,
how it
it's-
ends?
Take me away, I thought.
He's come.
He's
He's
come.
come.
Oh, he's
It's-
coming.
It's
He's
very.
coming.
It's very.
He's
It's about
come.
It's very
the
Christ-like.
Lord is coming.
It's
Okay,
very
because I was listening to
Christ-like.
that Diana Ross song.
I'm
it go,
Coming Out?
You can come inside me at the end of
Oh
it.
boy.
Do you come
Yeah.
inside me?
And
No,
I was-
that's Minnie Riperton.
Okay, so that's Minnie Riperton,
Yeah.
right? So I was thinking to myself, like, how the hell did that get on the radio? That was on regular ass
Well,
R&B
you know,
radio.
recurring theme on the show. We
The
talk
end of the
about
song
people
starts saying,
getting.
"You can come inside
Do you
me."
remember-
10 times.
Do you remember "Relax" by Frankie?
That goes all the way.
Yeah. Well, apparently, do you want to come? And they told
When you want to
people
come, yeah.
that was not about.
It wasn't about. He said.
Well,
it wasn't
Rolling
about sex.
Stones, Start Me Up. You make a dead man come. It's right there. They're saying it on the radio right now, somewhere in the
So
world.
all the record execs, all the radio execs say, "Hey, we don't know what that means."
Yeah, what?
We don't know what that
get it either.
means.
It could be anything.
All right. After long wait, I just want to say how much Prince meant to me. But yes, if I had to choose one song on Purple Rain, it would be "Darling Nikki." But I'm not gonna throw that away. We don't have to throw that away. But it's "Darling Nikki."
We have 2 votes for Darling Nikki. I'm
Yeah.
really shocked. I'm
Which
really
one,
shocked.
which one is yours?
Well, it's a difficult choice. We all know. I'm beating around the bush just as much as you are. Maybe slightly less than you. Your
Yeah,
beating around the bush was
I beat
many
all
minutes
around the
long.
bush. Yeah, it was
many
legendary.
minutes of beating around the
Great
bush.
album, by the way.
If I had to drop one, it would be "Take Me With You," which, to be fair, was the last song added
You're
to
crazy.
the soundtrack. The last
You're
song added to
crazy.
the soundtrack. And it kind of feels that way. It kind of feels shoved in there.
No.
It is one of the better scenes in the movie from a breast perspective. We probably won't use that on the show, but I'm just going to say it just so it's on record somewhere. From a breast perspective,
'Cause you
it's
want
one
that
of the
By
best
the way,
parts
kids,
of the show.
before the internet,
That's what we
in
had.
middle school,
That is what we had.
little guys would go, "Hey, have you seen Purple Rain? Okay, there's a scene in the middle at the lake," and that's how we spread. We couldn't send images, guys. We were just you had to know somebody.
Literally, the best part about
you had
that
to know
song.
somebody had a VHS. You had to know somebody had Purple Rain.
Arguably, the only good part about that song to me is evoking that image in my mind of
Okay.
Apollonia and
Well.
Lake Minnetonka. And then
Yeah.
he goes, "Oh, that's not Lake Minnetonka or whatever it's called."
Oh, it's not Lake Minnetonka.
Yeah, Minnetonka. Thank you.
Biggest
We-
lie. Purple
But that is
Rain.
my answer, and I'm sticking with it. And I'm proud of it.
Welcome back to One Song. Okay, there are so many funny stories about Prince out there, so much lore. Luxury, do you have a personal Prince story?
Well, I don't have a personal Prince story because I've never met the man.
Okay.
I wish I had, but I mean, what popped to mind as we were discussing the whole like Prince being a master at like programming machines, like that's a part of him not everybody knows about. So there's a funny story that I heard attached to that because he was touring with Rick James and the Stone City Band and the Prince and they were
This tour is crazy.
This tour is crazy. It's like, can you imagine getting to see both of those bands?
I've never heard anybody actually say they were at this tour.
Somebody had to be in that tour.
Somebody was.
I'm sure
Someone
they were
was buying
selling
lots
out.
of tickets, and apparently every night they were competing.
Every night they're competing, and like it's a very fierce competition to get the most applause, to get the most audience reaction. So at the end of the tour, apparently Prince's synths that he'd been using the whole time go missing. They're just gone, and Prince is, like, what the happened to my synth? So months go by, and he gets a note. One day they arrive, just like a box arrives with like his keyboards. And again, the value of Prince's keyboards is that they contain Prince's sounds.
Yeah.
So
the presets he's made for himself.
Dialed in his very specific Princey sounds from like 1999 or Controversy, I guess would have been the album at the time.
Oh, I think I know where the story's going.
So by the way, it says there's a note that says, "Thanks, motherfucker." And it turns out that Rick James had used the keyboards to program and play on the song Super Freak. So when you hear that sound, this distinctive synth sound on Super Freak, it is actually Prince's presets.
That's
that are
Prince
being used.
playing, technically?
It's not. It's almost as though Prince. It's like an interpolation,
Right.
Nice.
or perhaps
But it's like he dialed it in to sound like that.
he dialed it in to sound like that.
That's wild. Bashir, you have a
I do
Prince
have
story.
a really quick Prince story. There was a late, so one of the things about Prince that I always appreciated was that if you live in the LA area, like he would just show up places.
Yes.
Like you'd be like out at like Soho House or something. And it's like, by the way, whoever's playing piano sounds really good. And oh my God. So but even before that, this is way before that, there was a party in LA called Kiss and Grind. It's now
Yes.
our good friend Craig does it. But back in the day, it was a cool ass underground party downtown.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget one night. It's a room, maybe it's a little bit bigger than this, and it was packed full of people. It was so cool. It was so like, underground. I'll never forget one night I was in there and I was looking this way, talking to my friend. All of a sudden, everybody here did like this, and when I looked this way, it was like he was a ghost. Prince walked in, and as he walked, every single person,
Made space.
no, they got quiet. And as soon as he passed, they were like,
Which to our listeners, Bashir's going crazy right now. That's
but
why.
like they did it quiet, Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
you
like,
can't
I
make
was
any
like-
noise.
And it's one of those moments you go like, oh, that's what a star is.
Oh, let me
Yeah.
tell you.
You learn what a real star
I mean,
is.
when I first moved out here, I think he still had a place open called the Glam Slam. It was towards downtown.
Oh, wow.
And he was never there. But I have a story that's kind of similar to that. So one time I walked into a place on Cahuenga called The Room. I think y'all know it.
Oh,
And
I know it well.
I walked in and I was waiting to see like the typical. It's a real dive hole in the baller type place, but they always used to play good music. I don't know if they still do, but I walked into the room, and I feel like this sounds a little bit like someone else's prison story, but there was a girl sitting at the bar dressed all in yellow, and I was like, oh, she's kind of cute, and she had a big bodyguard with her. And then I looked the second time, I was like, oh shit, that's Prince. I was like, damn, Prince is mad cute. very, very small individual. No, here's my real Prince story, though. This one still eats me up to this day. I went to the Roosevelt Hotel with my friend Azizi, who Bashir knows, and we went there because we heard Prince was going to perform by the pool.
Nice.
And then we heard he was going to be in the ballroom. So everybody left the pool and went to the ballroom. And I was there. I had work in the morning. I was there till probably 2:15 in the morning. I told Z, I was like, I can't stay up anymore. I'm going to be asleep at work. I'm leaving. Woke up the next day to text messages. And this is like in the early days of the iPhone.
Oh,
so like when
no.
people send videos, like them shits is grainy. But he was
You
like,
missed it.
Prince just got him on stage. Message from like
No.
3:15.
Yeah.
3:30. He's doing all Michael Jackson covers.
What?
He just did Don't Stop Till You Get
No.
Enough and Wanna Be Started Something
That's
with his
mean.
band. I was like, damn
Don't tell
you,
me
Prince.
that.
That's why you have such bad FOMO nowadays.
Yeah, I do. I missed out on when Dad Punk brought that.
thing.
I went to every Coachella.
That
I
ain't
went
right.
to every Coachella
I saw him at
until
Coachella.
2006.
I saw him at Coachella, too.
Until 2006, and then the first time I didn't go, people were like, "Oh, we know Dad Punk is coming." I'm like, I'm a little soft on that new album. They brought out the Pyramid,
Yeah,
and
they
to
did.
this day, musicologists like you point to that performance as the year and the performance specific
Yeah.
that broke dance music wide in America. I have serious FOMO.
I have a feeling something's going to happen for you soon. Just keep.
I just
keep
got to
it
keep
up.
going to every
Be patient.
show
Yeah.
and stay out till 4 in the morning
I have
every
a good
night.
feeling
I'm
about
sure
you.
my kids will appreciate
Yeah.
that.
That's why I saw Prince at Coachella, And I remember that's when I realized I was getting older because we had VIP tickets and everything, and he was great.
What year is this?
Come on, I don't know.
2008.
I'm going to
somewhere?
roughly say it was 11 to 12 years
Is this
ago.
when you
I
did Creep?
don't
You did
know.
that Radiohead Creep cover?
I was going to say that me and my friend, who you know, Felicia, we were there, and
Uh-huh.
we were both like, do we want to watch more Prince or do we want to beat this traffic home? And we were both like, I kind of want to beat the traffic
Traffic
home.
is.
And what I heard on the way home was, I was like, nah, he's not playing Creep. That's impossible. There's no way he's playing my other favorite
Bashir
group,
being
Radiohead.
a huge Radiohead fan.
And I was like, oh, I should have stayed.
All right. So the last thing I want to talk about, the Revolution. The band had a pretty sad end, even though they get together for reunions. I think it was Dr. Fink was sick, and so they had a reunion maybe about 10 years ago to help him, and he's still with us. Some would say Prince fired them all in kind of humiliating ways. I actually don't know that backstory. I don't think we have enough time to get into today, but I did want to ask you, Bashir, have you ever been fired?
Yes, plenty of times.
All right, that's a fair enough answer.
I
Anything
got
to talk
fired. You
about?
want to hear? I got fired.
No. What's the fire story? It's old news now.
I got fired. I was a PA on a show, and I got fired. And then I had no food in my house. I was broke, and I still had my key card. So I was like, I'm gonna go on the weekend and clean that place out. So I went
for food. To be
for food,
clear, you
yeah,
weren't
I don't-
robbing.
yeah. No, I was broke. So and it was like
hungry.
stuff that they were gonna
snack
throw.
bar.
Just
I
food.
bought the food. I know they're gonna throw it away. They throw it away. So I went in there and got 2 grocery bags full of like Pop-Tarts,
Those granola things.
granola things.
Sweet Valley. What is
I was
that
like, I'm gonna live like a king.
They
And
didn't
then
need
on
them.
the way out, one of the writers on the show was working through the weekend. He was like, "Hey,"
He's like, hey, Bashir.
I was like, "Hey." He was like, "All right." I was like, "Yep." Shout out to that man. He's still working. He's never told anybody on me.
Oh, that's
We're
sweet.
colleagues now. I'm in the WGA, baby. But oh man, that was embarrassing.
Luxury, you ever been fired?
I mean, I've never been fired. I've actually gotten 3 people fired though, like in a very precocious way.
Like
I
this
had
week?
3 bad bosses, 3
Oh.
dudes above me who were not pulling their weight.
Oh,
And
wow.
I was like in my early 20s, and I like went to the boss above that boss, and I was like, this guy is like making me look bad. Like he's not doing this. Like I think back to that, I was like, freaking
You were
brash.
snitching crazy.
He was making my life hard.
That's
These
true.
people. These people were
That's
making
true.
my life hard.
They weren't black.
So
were they?
they were not black.
Okay, good.
I
No,
raised my hand, and
Thank
I was like, one of them was another Jew, just
Look,
like
here's the
me.
good news. Now the Clippers are a better team. So thank you. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I got fired for falling asleep in the law school library when I was in college. So that's what actually started off my
Fired
DJ
from what?
career.
What were you?
I
working
was
as?
supposed to be working, and I fell asleep in the library, and I I didn't dock myself those hours, and somebody told my boss that I had been sleeping. Long story short is that was when I lost my official term time job, and I started DJing, and I've never looked back. So there you
Your life got better.
go. We hope you've enjoyed "Let's Go Crazy"
Mm.
by Prince. And Luxury, will you help me in this thing?
Mm.
I have been producer, DJ, and songwriter Luxury. Find me on the internet at Luxury, LUXXURY, on Instagram, and at LUXXRYXX on TikTok.
Yeah, and I'm actor, writer, director, and sometimes DJ Diallo Riddle. You'll find me at Diallo on Instagram and at Diallo Riddle.
How many L's are there?
There are 2 L's.
Hey, can I do
Okay,
one
okay,
quickly?
2 L's.
Yeah.
And Bashir.
I'm on LinkedIn.
That's the best one.
I love it. Thank you so much for coming through, Bashir. I knew this was going to be an epic.
That was so fun.
episode.
Thank you for coming by, man.
This is One Song. We'll see you next time. The show is executive produced by Kevin Hart, Ty Randolph, Mike Stein, Brian Smiley, Eric Eddings, and Eric Wow. We'll see you next time.